Howdy folks, it's Aries and welcome back to Mindfork. With the End of Dispatch having just been released less than a week ago, that void we're all feeling now that the Wednesday morning cartoons are gone is sad to say the least. And so, what do we do with all this extra time now? Well, what if we come up with some possibilities? This technically isn't a theory, I'm embodying my boy Shroud here and just making some predictions, which actually gives you the opportunity to tell me what you want in Season 2. Let me know in the comments below. But for ease of watching, I'm going to split this video into two parts. First is the logistical side. What can Ad Hoc do from here? Second is the fun stuff, the narrative, what I'd hope to see story-wise. We won't get too specific, and I don't have a lot planned for that. It's just some ideas I thought might be fun. Anyway, let's start on logistics. If Ad Hoc decides to make a Season 2, there are two paths you can take on the get-go. First is you make a completely new story with new characters in the same universe. Life is Strange is a good example of this. You can slot in some old characters as cameos, but they'd be sparse and take a backseat to the new cast of heroes. It's the easiest way to do it, doesn't get messy, and you're not forced to write a story like you're playing dodgeball, all this ducking and weaving through potential inconsistencies from the last game. The second path is what most Telltale games usually do, and that's a direct continuation of the last season, but built and written in a very specific way, just so you get to keep the choices you made previously. Now, this one comes with a lot of problems to solve, and so that's what we'll be focusing on for now. I came up with as many as 4 possible routes they could take when figuring out a Season 2 as a direct continuation. There are pros and cons for each, which we'll get to in time. I also gave them unofficial names so we can keep track of each one better. Sound good? Great. The bottleneck. How this would work is that the choices you made in the first game do carry over, but they very slowly funnel into one specific timeline. Yes, this does somewhat invalidate the choices you made in the last game, which is why those little stars exist. Little memory nuggets of your playthrough that shine through at specific moments, like a change in dialogue, an extra or missing scene, just a little something that shows that yes, your choices were seen and heard and do show up a little in this game, but they have no real bearing on the main plot. The canon. This is basically where the devs would choose one specific ending and canonize it, with every other route being non-canon. Some people have brought this one up as being the most likely since the endings in the first game are very different in some ways. The devs could either choose a path they find the most thematically rich, or they could even choose the one the most players chose themselves, so the inevitable fallout of "my choices didn't matter," quote unquote, is more minimal than some of these other options. As of right now, the most common ending was people succeeding as a mentor, romancing Vizzy, and sparing Shroud, so it would probably be that one. The spiderweb. It's somewhat similar to the bottleneck, except that the overlap is extremely distant. How this would work is that the choices you made in the first game do carry over, and basically create a whole new experience for each ending. Then, throughout the game, the choices you make branch you off into other routes. I don't see this very often, if at all. The only one that I know that even comes close is Scarlet Hollow. Side note, I'd highly recommend playing it, it's got a lot of depth. And finally, the stage play. This one is basically the bottleneck if it happens before the events of the game. So yes, you do choose your own ending in the first game, but a time skip from the events of the game to the second narrows you into one specific path and shows you this through flashbacks or whatever. Although, also like the bottleneck, this one has stars too, referencing and paying homage to the choices you made the last time. Now, all of these rely on 2 variables. The first is cost. Some of these require much more time, money, and people than the others. Second is the audience. If you've been paying attention to anyone talking about a possible Season 2, then this is bound to come up, not wanting to feel like your choices were completely invalidated. And the only way to do that, with a 100% success rate, is to make something entirely different. A story completely separate from the first game, following a different protagonist. So, if we want Robert back, we need to choose from one of these 4. The cheapest to do is the canon, very closely followed by the stage play, since they effectively start the same way. One main timeline. The difference is that the stage play will eventually show you in short bursts how these paths converged before the events of the game. The canon will not. The trade-off for these is that, as I mentioned before, your choices in the previous game will feel almost entirely redundant. After that is the bottleneck. Those of you that have played the Telltale games will recognise this one since you start at the exact ending you worked for in the previous game. However, the story will eventually all lead to the same point fairly early on. This one is slightly more expensive than the previous 2 since you need to add new scenes for the start of each route, but it also comes with the benefit of making it feel like your player's choices mattered. The most expensive is obviously the spiderweb, since you're practically making a dozen different games. But of course, because there are so many possibilities, it will feel extremely linear, which is like the holy grail for visual novels. So, out of these, which is the best? My opinion is the middle ground, the bottleneck. Not too crazy cost-wise, but still feels like your choices in the previous game mattered somewhat. But then the second question is, how exactly do we get away with this? Some of Season 1's endings are pretty different, most notably choosing between Invisigal and Blazer, killing or sparing Shroud, and Vizzy's potential defection to the dark side. First, let's tackle Shroud's dead or alive status since it's the easiest. He won't exist. He makes no appearance in the second game at all. Alternatively, I saw this as a suggestion pretty often. If you kept him alive, you could have a scene where Robert goes to Shroud for help with something like a Hannibal Lecter type situation. But if you killed him, you can either get the info another way, or, I don't know, even show up to his grave and meet someone there to help. That might be funny. Either way though, having him not show up but affirming your choice with a slight difference in dialogue or scenes solves that issue pretty neatly. Next is Invisigal versus Blazer. The easiest way to reconcile this without breaking anything is to also have them be absent, but only when Season 2 begins. We'll have them come back right before the bottleneck hits. And surprisingly enough, it actually lines up pretty well, considering how Season 1 ends. Since no matter what route you take, Blazer doesn't have her crystal anymore. She's effectively barred from superhero work altogether. She could take some temporary leave, since I don't imagine she'd want everyone in the office to know her secret identity, or she can stay tucked away in her office. Doesn't matter too much either way. Then there's Vizzy. No matter what route you take, she always leaves SDN. We'll get into the specifics of that one shortly. The moments that reference your choice here could be a small early conversation about how things are going with the partner you chose, a photo on Robert's desk, a quick call, etc, etc. And the last thing, probably the most difficult, is Vizzy's defection versus loyalty. Something I noticed that I thought was interesting is in the ending where Invisigal takes a bullet for us. When she's being carried away on a stretcher, Blazer says something like,
"There's always a home for you here, Courtney." I appreciate that.
Which implies to me that she's unsure of whether Vizzy wants to come back or not, so we can lean into that considering that she leaves in the other ending anyway. So we can start the game off with Vizzy absent. Like I mentioned before, perhaps she went off the grid a little after Shroud's attack and we haven't heard from her. However, during her inevitable Season 2 Act 2 re-entry, we can find out that she was busy taking out the last of the Red Ring, Robin Hood style. In the villain ending, I think her giving the Astral Pulse back to Robert and Blazer's comment when you talk about the potential for her reviving Red Ring says the most about what might happen. Red Ring is dead, but there's still criminals. Stragglers causing problems are bound to happen, and Vizzy dealing with it on her own works, whether she becomes a hero or a villain. Of course, you might think, well, what would be the point of her becoming a villain in Season 1 if she was just going to do heroic shit in Season 2? And to that I say, that wasn't really one of our choices, was it? Yes, we failed as her mentor, we didn't support her and she turned into a villain, but we didn't mean for that to happen. We didn't choose to do that to her, it was an unfortunate side effect. So redeeming her in the second game won't have that quote-unquote your choices didn't matter feel. Not like, for example, choosing to kill Shroud and having him appear in jail the next game, because that was a clear choice. Vizzy turning into a villain wasn't a clear choice, it was a consequence. Not to mention that she wasn't all that villainous at any point really. What possible reason would she have to turn back to being a bad guy, considering all the shit she went throughout Season 1? She only got in close with the Red Ring because of the augments, wanted out because she was indebted to them, and then got out but wasn't all that thrilled about what she had to do to get it. So both endings here suggest to me that she's neither a hero nor a villain. She's something in between, and I think Season 2 should lean into that. There's also the small matter of forgiving or forgetting whoever sided with the Red Ring, Coop or Sonar, but I imagine the effect would be minimal. At most, you forgive them, they would appear in the minigame as a dispatchable hero. If not, they don't. Now, I realise that was a lot to go through, so in addition to some creative liberties, I'll regale you with a story. We begin several months later after SDN has rebuilt its building, and everyone is finally getting back to tip-top shape. Blazer, now depowered, has decided to take a leave of absence. She can't very well stay at SDN without everyone knowing her true identity as Mandy. But more importantly, she's heard recently of a strange rumor that may fix Chase's unique predicament, something to substitute the gem and keep Chase alive. And so, leaving Robert in charge, and with nothing else to do, she sets off to find it. Vizzy, however, went off the grid shortly after Shroud's attack. Not everyone is sure what she's doing or how to contact her, but vigilantism seems more her speed anyway, so they give her the benefit of the doubt and wait for her to return, if at all. Meanwhile, the original gang is settling into their newfound popularity as heroes, and with Blaze's absence, Robert is given the chance to revive the Phoenix program in a much bigger way. Hearing how successful these former villains were at redeeming themselves and saving the city, the Phoenix program is now accepting imprisoned supervillains to get a reduced sentence. So, let me break down why I think this works. First is the Vizzy/Blazer situation. The literal physical distance between Robert and the love interest can be the main romantic foundation. Challenges, doubts, and new emotional beats can come rampant with long-distance relationships. You could add a third potential love interest to the mix to complicate things, but I don't feel good about that one. Aside from that, I feel it would also be wrong to make a season 2 of Robert's story with them missing. The only problem is that if we go for the bottleneck route, the start of season 2 is going to be very messy if both of them are still around, so we need them both to take a back seat until the threads are all cleaned up, then they can return. The second I had was introducing another Z team. We'll call them Z2. I like the idea that Z1, our original team, is directly mentoring Z2, and so more abrasive and uncooperative villains are added to the roster. The Phoenix program, having gained so much more traction, is now allowing current supervillains to join just to get a reduced sentence. That way, you can throw in characters like Toxic, other Red Ring supervillains from the first game, or even any of the other faceless villains we hear about in the various calls, all without worrying too much about their intentions in joining the program. They're not here to be rehabilitated or do something good, they're just here to get out of prison quicker. Makes for an entirely different dynamic than Z1, since Z2 would be full of people that don't give a shit about redemption, which would also make it all the more satisfying to have them eventually do so. The last thing I want to mention is the main villain. Honestly, you could throw any old bad guy at the setup and be somewhat alright. What I do think though is that they should be independent of Red Ring, maybe even a villain created by what Shroud does in the finale. Might be interesting. But they should also go for a villain that directly affects the mechanics of the dispatching game. I've always loved a good mind-controlling bad guy since you never know who to trust, and not knowing who on your team is a ticking time bomb would make sending them out all the more risky. Food for thought. Haven't given it a lot of focus here, might even make another video solely on making a potential villain. Perhaps we need to revive the redesign series I started a year ago-ish to make some mock-ups. Tell me what you think in the comments below. But anyway, like and subscribe, join me for the ride if you fancy, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.